start with a solemn, thoughtful tone, perhaps over archival footage of soldiers. When we picture the Great Wars, we see tanks, planes, and infantry clashing on the battlefield. But behind every front line, another war was being waged. A silent, desperate struggle not for territory, but for life itself. This was the hidden battle for survival, fought with bandages, blood, and medicine. Behind every wounded soldier was a desperate fight for these precious supplies. This is the story of the unsung heroes and the logistical miracles that determined who lived and who died. The sheer scale of the conflict created a logistical nightmare. Imagine millions of soldiers scattered across continents, each a potential casualty. Getting a single bandage or a dose of morphine to a wounded man in a muddy trench was a monumental task. This wasn't just about having the supplies, it was about getting them to the right place, at the right time. The success of any army depended as much on its supply sergeants and medics as it did on its generals. This was the science of medical logistics, a complex web of production, transportation, and distribution that stretched from factories back home to the most remote corners of the war. A failure at any point in this chain could be fatal. At the heart of this medical revolution were two miracle drugs, penicillin and sulfa drugs. Before their widespread use, a simple infection from a shrapnel wound could be a death sentence. Soldiers often died not from the initial injury, but from the rampant bacteria that followed. Sulfa drugs, first used in the late 1930s, were a game changer. They could be sprinkled directly into wounds as a powder, immediately halting bacterial growth. Medics carried packets of it, and soldiers were often issued them in their first aid kits. It was a first line of defense that saved countless lives right on the battlefield. Then came penicillin. Though discovered in 1928, it was the immense pressure of the war that fast-tracked its mass production. This powerful antibiotic could combat a wide range of infections that sulfa drugs couldn't touch. By 1944, Allied forces had enough penicillin to treat every single casualty. It dramatically reduced deaths from gas gangrene, pneumonia, and other infections that had plagued armies for centuries. The ability to produce and distribute penicillin on an industrial scale was a strategic advantage as significant as any weapon. It meant soldiers could survive wounds that would have been fatal just a few years earlier, allowing experienced troops to return to the fight. Another critical innovation was the use of blood plasma. Massive blood loss or shock was a primary killer on the battlefield. Whole blood was difficult to transport and store, as it required constant refrigeration and had a short shelf life. But plasma, the liquid component of blood, could be dried into a powder. This powder was lightweight, stable, and could be stored for long periods without refrigeration. When needed, a medic simply had to mix it with sterilized water. This instant blood could be administered right in the field, stabilizing a soldier until they could be evacuated for a proper transfusion. Nationwide blood drives back home became a patriotic duty, with millions of civilians donating blood to be processed into plasma for the troops. This direct link between the home front and the front line saved an immeasurable number of lives. This entire system was supported by a revolutionary chain of evacuation. The goal was to get a wounded soldier from the battlefield to a fully equipped hospital as quickly as possible. It started with the combat medic, who provided immediate aid under fire. From there, the wounded were moved to a battalion aid station, a small mobile unit just behind the front lines. Here, they could be stabilized further before being transported to larger clearing stations and eventually to fully staffed field hospitals. These hospitals were often vast, tented cities, capable of performing complex surgeries just miles from the fighting. For the most severe cases, a network of hospital ships and medical transport planes stood ready to evacuate soldiers to specialized hospitals far from the danger zone. This tiered, efficient system ensured that a soldier received escalating levels of care, maximizing their chances of survival. In stark contrast, the Axis powers faced a crippling medical crisis. While German medicine was advanced at the start of the war, their logistical capabilities couldn't keep up with their rapid conquests and a multi-front war. Supply lines were overstretched and constantly under attack. They suffered from severe shortages of everything, from basic bandages and anesthetics to crucial drugs like sulfa. They never managed to mass-produce penicillin, a catastrophic failure that cost them dearly. Their blood transfusion service was rudimentary compared to the Allies' plasma program. As the war dragged on, German field medics were often forced to reuse supplies or make do with inadequate substitutes. This medical disparity meant that an Allied soldier with a serious wound had a significantly higher chance of survival than their German counterpart with the same injury. The battle for medical superiority was one the Axis powers decisively lost. So, the next time you see images of war, look beyond the explosions and the tanks. Remember the quiet, determined work of the medics, the nurses, the doctors, and the logistics personnel. They were fighting a different kind of war, a war against pain, infection, and death itself. The innovations in medical logistics, the miracle of penicillin, and the life-saving power of plasma weren't just medical advancements. They were strategic assets that helped shape the outcome of the war. They represent a powerful testament to human ingenuity and the enduring will to save lives, even in the midst of overwhelming destruction. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this look into the hidden side of history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you might not have heard before. Let me know in the comments what other unsung aspects of history you'd like to explore. Until next time, stay curious.